Good evening, everybody. It's Andrew Roberts here from the Great Property Meet. And firstly, my apologies for the technical error there, where I was unfortunately with a technical problem getting YouTube to work. But I'm hopefully glad that you've all managed to find us and join us here now on this live stream on our alternative backup channel. So while we allow people to quickly jump on, could you join us by putting a message on the YouTube box just to say that you can hear audio and you can see us? That would be very helpful and let us know that you're here. And we can just complete a few sound checks and our esteemed panelists can all begin to get themselves ready. So I shall just wait for you on YouTube for about 5 seconds to pick up some of the comments that are hopefully coming through. So I can see that there's a number watching already, and I shall just mute to pick up some of the comments that are hopefully coming through. I've just got feedback on my audio. So people are jumping on there and can see us and hear us too. So what I shall do is just continue on. Now, firstly, good evening and welcome from the Great Property Meet, and thank you for joining us despite our technical difficulties earlier. Let me just quickly explain our introduction video that we've just shared there. I'm a passionate supporter of the Royal National Institute for the Blind, and at this particular moment in time, they are struggling massively with fundraising because they normally do it through face-to-face events. As I've supported them for over 12 years, I've offered to put out their video and share the link to help them raise some funds, which you'll find on the homepage of the RNIB website. Now, I'd like you to support our meeting and to thank our advertisers who have helped us either through either through the advertising or through the talks that they deliver over the course of the year. And again, we at the Great Property Meet are very, very thankful for all of that support we receive, and I'm delighted that we actually have one of our sponsors here tonight, Mr. Mark Alexander, who will be our first panelist. So, without further ado, what I'm going to do is briefly introduce you to our 3 panelists. Our 3 panelists will be Mark Alexander speaking first today, followed by Mr. Daniel Hill, and Mr. John Corey will be last, and I believe he has a technology treat for us all during his talk as well. And all 3 of our guest speakers are going to share with us insights into what they are doing to prepare for the exit from Covid-19 and the opportunities that they see ahead, and how they are preparing their business and how they suggest you prepare yours. So when they've all given their talk, we will have a question and answer session with you. So without delay, I'd like to begin by introducing our first speaker. Now, I'm really not quite sure where to start with introducing Mark. I mean, he's been an entrepreneur for 35 years now in property, finance, tax, law. Oh, is there anything Mark doesn't do? He's the founder of the absolutely phenomenal resource, Property 118, which is a news feed to the Google, and it's an accredited news feed. He's got 11 million user sessions per annum, and it's free to subscribe to. So if you're not already a subscriber of Property 118, I suggest you get over there after the meeting and subscribe to Property 118. Now, back in 1992, Mark founded the National Association of Commercial Finance Brokers because he was a commercial finance broker himself and was in the sector 25 years. And he also won the hearts and the minds of landlords through one of the largest class actions that ever took place in the UK. And he put a lot of his own money into this and secured £27.5 million win off the West Bromwich Building Society in conjunction with another one of our previous speakers, Mr. Mark Smith. So, I mean, He's a prolific campaigner. He's campaigned on Clause 24 as well against George Osborne, and working in conjunction with Mark Smith, he's also come up with a number of tax-saving strategies. So what I would say is, if we can give Mark Alexander a great big warm welcome, and I'll pass over to you. I mean, I could go on all day. Your list is endless, Mark. But
thank you very much, Andrew.
How are you preparing for the exit, and how do you recommend landlords prepare? Because you've got quite a sizable portfolio yourself.
Indeed, indeed. I would like to just point out that the two main things that you talked about there, the formation of the NACFB, and also the case we took against the West Bromwich Building Society, which created a lot of case law, or two pieces of case law, and the 27.5 million win, were both done not for profit. So I didn't take a penny out of either of those campaigns, and that's why I was delighted to get awards for both of those in industry recognition. So thank you for that introduction. That's wonderful for you to pick up on those things that were the not-for-profit bits that I've done for the sector as a whole. To answer your question, I'm feeling quite philosophical at the moment. And it might come across in my presentation and the rhetorical questions that I'll be asking for anybody watching this broadcast. And I'd like to think that that's a good thing. So to start off with, my first philosophical question is this: what have we missed most during lockdown? I'll repeat that. What have we missed most during lockdown? Now, for me, it's not going to the restaurants or the bars or the pool clubs. It's this most simple thing of all, and I suspect a lot of people will resonate with this. What I've missed most of all during lockdown is to be able to just give my loved ones a hug. And for me, it's not knowing when I'll be able to give my family and friends, and other people will be thinking the same thing, their grandchildren, their children, and so on, a big hug. That's what I've missed most during lockdown. So I've decided that, and I will come on to this, and it will become relevant and as to how it works in property, because I think property is very much about mindset, and success is very much about mindset as well. But I thought to myself, you know, how am I going to deal with things differently? And I'll ask this another philosophical question. It's you know, a question that people can't answer necessarily today, but how are they going to change things when we come out of this lockdown? Are you still going to spend, you know, the only time you spend with most of your friends and family, is that only going to be during christenings, weddings or funerals? Or are you going to spend a little bit more effort? Now, I made a decision like that a few years ago. And as some of you know who are tuning into this, who know me and follow me on Property 118 or Facebook, I emigrated just over 4 years ago now. I went to live in Malta. And it was one of the things that I reflected on back then as well. So now for me, it's about, okay, when will I next get an opportunity to spend this time with my friends and family? But I've thought about this in the past as well. And you know, there were lots of reasons why I became an expat. It was always my intention to become a little more nomadic, to travel the world, to spend more time in different parts of the world that I really enjoy. But it was brought forward as a result of me looking at tax planning opportunities at the same time. And it kind of brought it all forward when George Osborne announced his changes to the restrictions on finance cost relief to the basic rate of tax for private landlords. So right back then, when I moved away, I thought, how am I going to spend more time with my loved ones? And I'm really pleased to say that I actually get to spend a lot more time, because before I made the move, it was literally a case of having dinner with them. And it might be a couple of hours, or we might meet for a coffee, or we might meet for a shopping trip. And I didn't get to spend much quality time with people. But the wonderful thing about having houses all over the world is that you find that your friends and family want to come and visit you a little bit more often. And they don't come and visit you for 2 hours, they come and visit you for 2 days or 2 weeks or 2 months. So I've actually got to spend a lot of quality time with my friends and family. And I think that's a really important thing to think about, because, and I'm going to come on to more about this, is knowing why you're doing these things. Why are you investing into property? We'll come on to that in a little while. But in terms of my first tip, in terms of what can you do during the lockdown period, other than have reflective discussions with yourselves like the ones that I've just explained, my first tip is do your accounts. Now, we know what it's like. Your accountant probably starts to nag you to do your accounts sometime around the summer holidays, and you think to yourself, oh, it's the summer holidays. We could put that off for a little bit. And then they start to have another nag in the autumn, and I call that the autumn apathy. And, oh, we've got ages yet. They don't need to be done by January. And then, of course, the panic of the Christmas period and the celebrations of the New Year kick in. And then once that's over, you realize you've got something like 20 to 30 days to get your accounts done. Now, it's really important. You've got not much better to do. There's only so much Netflix you can watch, for goodness sake. So ask yourself this question. Do you know how much tax you're going to be paying in January and July of next year, including the on-account payments? And if the answer to that is no, then how do you know what you can invest? It's about building solid foundations. Now, I'm not an accountant. My wife is an accountant, and I actually employ 3 accountants, one in Malta. I've got another one in Portugal that does look after my international affairs, and one in Norfolk that looks after my UK property portfolio. But one of the things that I know for sure is that by the end of April, all my accounts for this year will be done, and I'll know exactly how much tax I'm going to be paying next year. Now, that leads me on to the next question that you should be asking yourself whilst you're in lockdown, and that is, why did you really decide to invest in property? And the reason that I raised this one is, whenever you want to decide a destination, or if you're going on a journey, there's 2 things you need to know. Or firstly, where you are, and secondly, where you want to go. But if you haven't done your accounts, you don't know where you are right now. If you don't know where to go, the chances of getting there is very, very slim. You'll get somewhere, but where that will be, that might not be the place that you want to end up at. And it reminds me, for those of us who are old enough to remember when we didn't have satellite navigation in our cars or digital phones, and we used to get lost, then if we didn't have a map and we didn't know where we were, the only choice was to wind the window down. Can you remember the window winders, Andrew? You used to wind the window down, and you used to ask the guy, and it was usually the local village idiot who you ended up with, wasn't it? And you'd say, excuse me, I'm a little bit lost, I don't know where I am, but where I want to get to is the Old Feathers in wherever. And you'd get the village idiot who'd say, well, I wouldn't be starting from here if I was you. And then he'd start to give you the crazy directions, like it's 3 miles before the old Woolworths that closed down, and that sort of thing. This is the sort of position that I think a lot of landlords are in right now. They don't necessarily know where they are because they haven't done their accounts, and they haven't really thought about where they want to go. Now, when we're doing our tax planning consultations, as I've said, as you said, Andrew, property finance, tax and law is something that I've been in for the last 35 years. I run the Property 118 tax team. Obviously, at the helm of that is Mark Smith, the head of chambers at Cotswold Barristers. But we do have also 5 consultants, and we're looking to expand that team to 10 this year. And we do always ask our clients, why is it that you got into property? And probably the most honest answer I've ever heard, but I don't hear it very often, is, well, it seemed like a good thing to invest into, and then I got hooked. But that really doesn't answer the question. Now, the questions that people then come up with are the most common answers I am used to hearing, are things like, oh, well, I'm into property because I want to create cash flow, or I want to build a fund for my retirement, or I want to create a legacy. So I asked another 2 questions based on that, and it could be any one or a number of those things. And the 2 questions I ask are, well, have you got an exit strategy, and have you considered succession planning? And again, a lot of landlords don't know the answer to that question. They haven't really given it any thought. So succession planning is often, well, when I die, I want somebody to inherit my property portfolio, and that person is X. And the exit strategy is, well, probably death, but I might like to sell some to pay the mortgages down. And another key question that people can focus on during lockdown to get this sort of base planning right, and to make sure that they're starting from the right place and ending in the right place, is to actually know what their vision is for retirement, or whatever it is that they're trying to achieve, and find out whether their chosen ownership structure is the right one for that. So a lot of people think regularly about income tax, but do they think about capital gains tax? If they want to sell some properties to pay down debt, how is that going to affect things? So if their properties have doubled, trebled, quadrupled in value, how is that going to impact? How is their ownership structure going to impact on CGT? If they've said, oh, well, the succession planning, I'll give you a classic example of succession planning. And you see it in lots and lots of businesses because they're called something and son. And or something and family, something and sons. And people think to themselves, well, okay, I'll work until I'm so old, and then I want to go on cruises and play more golf and go on more holidays, and I'm hoping that the children are going to be part of the business. Or they might think, well, the children don't want to be part of the business, I'll have employees running the business, and this sort of thing. But what about inheritance tax? When they do eventually die, how is the structure that they have created today going to translate in terms of passing that business to their next of kin? So these are the really important ground rules that when you're starting out in property investments are the most vital ones that you need to look at before you buy anything. Now, I appreciate that a lot of people that are watching this live, and the thousands that will doubtless watch this video when we start to put it on Property 118 and Facebook and other social media as a recording, those people are going to be thinking, well, I've already started out. You know, I started out 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and I didn't think of these things. Is it too late? Well, I'll go back to the old Confucius saying that people might have heard of before. And Confucius said the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, and the second best time is today. Well, today during lockdown is a phenomenal time to think about what you're doing, how you're going to get there, and how you might transition from where you are now into the optimal structure to take you to your destination. There's no reason to say you can't change your mode of transport when you're on your way to the destination. So you might start off walking, catch a bus, get a train, then buy a car and complete the rest of the journey. And it's exactly the same for property investment landlords. You can change the way you're doing things. Now, I want to just talk about some examples of ownership structures. If we go back, it's less than 5 years ago, but certainly more than anybody who's been in the business for 10 or more years was probably encouraged to buy in their own names or in their joint names and didn't really consider a partnership. But it's never too late to do these things. So think about forming a partnership with your children. Think about forming a partnership with your professional advisors. You don't necessarily need to share the equity in your properties to have a partner. So for example, in a limited liability partnership, somebody can join with a zero capital account and you can adjust the profit share annually based on performance. Then there are other forms like limited companies. Now, I know a lot of people have got limited companies or have recently transitioned or are considering transitioning into limited companies, but there are also ways of making sure that that limited company and any growth within that limited company sits outside of your estate for inheritance tax purposes. Now, that's a very, very, very brief overview. I know that we've only got a very limited amount of time, Andrew. I could talk about non-resident status at far more length. I could also talk about PLCs because I've been on that journey from sole trader, partnership, LLP, limited company, PLC. I know we haven't got a lot of time today. If I may, Andrew, I'd just like to give a plug for a much longer debate that I've got running elsewhere on Saturday. Is that okay?
I'd absolutely love you to.
Yeah, that's another property conference that's running for 2 days on Friday and Saturday. Mine is, you'll find it on property118.com if you want to go and have a look. It's a live Facebook tube, live YouTube feed again, and it will also be on Facebook. And that presentation is going to last for a whole hour. Joshua is a chartered accountant. He's going to be a practicing chartered accountant. He's going to be interviewing me on some of the strategies that I've used personally and other strategies that I recommend to other people. So there's going to be lots more time. The other thing I would say is, you know, if I've got you thinking just a little bit about getting your accounts done, that's fantastic. If you want to go the extra step and look at your the structures that might be appropriate for you, please do go and have a look at property118.com/tax. Doesn't cost you anything. You scroll to the bottom of the page, all of the different types of structures that we recommend are there, and we don't charge you anything for that. Obviously, we would if you wanted to have a bespoke business consultation. But that's just a brief overview from me. So it's about, the reason I think you wanted to put me first, Andrew, is that I just wanted to make it so that whatever our other speakers talk about, and I know they're great speakers, that people listening to this this broadcast are building on solid ground. And the most solid ground is know where you are and know where you want to go. And then these guys can perhaps give you some more strategies on, or some more ideas on how to take that destination and what's the optimal way for you to do that, to actually make the money within the ownership structure that you've got. So I'll hand back to you, Andrew.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mark. What I would love to do is to give you a massive thank you for that. And what the audience don't know is Mark is actually broadcasting live from Florida. There is a lightning storm going on behind Mark, but because of his backdrop, you can't see it. And we were doubting whether we were going to keep the signal there because his signal's been dropping out with the lightning storm. So, Mark, thank you very, very much for joining us. There's some pearls of wisdom. I know you're going to be on the line later to answer questions. And all that requires me to say is thank you on behalf of the audience, which the audience has grown to 88 whilst we've been talking. So they've pretty much all jumped on towards the start of your talk as well, which is brilliant.
Excellent.
So, Mark, thank you very much. And what I'd now like to do is introduce the phenomenal Daniel Hill. Now, for those of you who don't know Daniel, he's an award-winning, successful entrepreneur. He's chairman of the Pulse Property Trading Group, a multi-million-pound consortium of 20 privately owned businesses in the UK and overseas. Now, I thought you would love to hear from Daniel today. The reason you'd love to hear from Daniel is he has successfully applied for and received 3 coronavirus business interruption loans at a ridiculously low interest rate. I'll let Daniel share that with you when he comes on. Now, Daniel has also trained thousands of UK property investors and entrepreneurs, and he's launched 13 different businesses, from one-man lifestyle businesses right the way up to national, multinational organizations. So if we can all just quickly let me know that you can hear us on the YouTube by putting some comments in the box while we give Daniel, if we can give him a clap or a hi, Daniel, then we'll get Daniel Hill on right away. And you'll probably notice his backdrop. It's not a virtual one. This is a real backdrop. I'll let him tell you precisely where he is in the UK, but welcome, Daniel. Thank you.
Evening, Andrew. Thank you very much for having us, and a great opening conversation from Mark. So I think the general tone for this evening is, Andrew was saying about my backdrop. So I actually live, this year I decided to live on a narrowboat. So I'm coming to you from the canals of somewhere around Northampton. Outside of living on a narrowboat, we've got a range of companies. So those of you that are in property, we've got property investment companies. So I have a portfolio myself. We build portfolios for armchair investors around the world. We have a development company, so mainly my own developments. We do some for clients, but mainly my own. They're high density, build to rent to sell, high density schemes for the PRS primarily. We have a portfolio management group. So we have a head office in Nottingham, and then we have 7 offices around the UK. And we have a training company. So Property Entrepreneur, many of you will be familiar with, is our property business in property training program. And we have 100 property entrepreneurs each year who learn all the models we've used to start companies, systemize them, scale them, buy them, help people to sell them, take them through those processes. So the conversation tonight is about COVID-19. Obviously, in the last 8 weeks, the world has changed. Everything's been turned on its head. We're in this new normal now. And behind the scenes, we've been coaching our property entrepreneurs on what do we actually do at this time? So I suppose to give you the maximum value this evening, there's a few things to consider. So there's only 3 things we're doing with all of our businesses, and we're encouraging all of our property entrepreneurs today. The first is strategy. So it's really understand what's happening in the market, what's happening in the industry, timing wise, what's going to happen when lockdown starts to get released. So the first is strategy. The second is communication. This is a very human thing that's going on, and we're all in the same boat. So if you've got investors, creditors, stakeholders, partners, suppliers, whoever, communication now, not just high communication or not high communication, but effective communication, strategic communication. This is where we are, this is what we're doing, and club together. This is a very human thing we're all doing. So strategy, communication, and then finance is you really need to understand financially what's going on in your business. You need to be able to forecast the next 3, 6, 12 months, understand what's going to happen there. And then also we're very privileged to live in the UK. The government are getting a bad rap at the minute for everything. It's getting exhausting listening to the press releases. The government announcements are good in the main, but then the PR coming at them, it's exhausting. They're just there to poke dogs with sticks. And there's nothing. There's one thing worse than listening to the press asking questions. It's listening to the politicians not answer them, and it's just exhausting. All things considered, I think the government have done a fantastic job in mobilising fast, starting to put some initiatives in place. And I suppose one of the things is to understand what's happening and make the most of it. So as far as understand what's happening, the model that we're working on is 3 months high impact, 3 months recovery, and then a longer 18-month curve for everything to get back to normal. You've got to appreciate there's a wealth to health paradigm where initially it was we've got to protect society, just suppress the economy. This is now balancing out, and I think you're going to see lockdown released and relaxed a lot quicker than other people are saying. I genuinely think. I think you're going to see people the children, I think, will go back to school for the summer term. I think in the next 3 to 4 weeks, you'll see things get lifted. There'll be a phased release by sector, industry, age, potentially, even geography, if we get any sort of tracking in place. And things are going to start freeing up. And I think strategically, what we need to do with our businesses is just obviously you've got to survive, but you want to thrive. You want this to be the making of your business, not the breaking of it. And what we've encouraged our property entrepreneurs to do, what we've done in our companies is, look, we've got a duck come to join us. He's obviously into high density development. We've worked with all of our companies. I don't know if you've had a duck on your calls before, Andrew.
Well, we've had a frog at our property meet with Linda Wright. So you've now topped it with a duck. Thank you there, Daniel.
I aim to please. So strategically, it's looking at all of your companies and look at best and worst case scenario. So what's actually going to happen? And there is a model that we've drawn with regards to when this is all released. In fact, you can download, if you're not already in the property entrepreneurs community on Facebook, it's completely free to join. You have to answer 3 questions to show you are actually an active investor, because it's in advanced business. It's not, we don't really teach people how to do property. It's more business. Completely free to join. There's some downloads in there. You can see what we're doing. When you understand what's happening in the market, it's then just being really strategic with your business. Financially, there's loads of initiatives available. So grants, we've got 2 grants going through at the minute. One for we own a reasonably large business centre that we rent out to individual companies. We're getting a grant for that. We've got our head office. We're getting a grant for that. We've used the government deferment initiatives to increase our capitalisation. We've used mortgage holidays to raise liquid funds to enable us to ride through. And most recently, we've had, so less than 1% of businesses in the UK up to yesterday, although the amount of loans has pretty much doubled in the last 24 hours, loans granted, the CBILS loans, the Corona Interruption Business Loan Scheme, the scheme's been made available as part of the 330 billion that Rishi's made available for businesses. There's a very solid well, we started this 4 weeks ago, nearly 5 weeks ago. So speed of implementation is really key. And there's only a few criteria. So we've now had, there's less than 1% of businesses in the UK have been successful so far. We've been successful. We had last week, we had 3 of our loans fully approved, and we actually had the money arrive in our account this morning. We applied for 140,000. We had 125,000 deposited in our account this morning, and that was at rates between 2.4 and just over 3%. So you're never going to see finance like this available ever again. It is a once in a lifetime lifeline. Like, you need to understand how to do it. If you want the blueprint that we used, again, go on the property entrepreneur community, go on my own, go on Daniel Hill Facebook page, follow me on there. We've posted the blueprint that we used. It's 5 steps, very, very easy to do. So make the most of these things. And then strategically, just to finish, I think, like, be greedy when others are fearful, and be fearful when others are greedy. Warren Buffett's, he's one of the best investors of all time. There's always opportunity. It's just understanding the market. So what's happened is the rules have changed. You're going to see as well, what you're going to see is at the minute, we're in this forest fire where the fire's tearing through the woods. It's getting rid of all the dead wood, and then all the healthy trees will grow back faster, bigger, stronger, quicker the other side. What you're also going to see after this lockdown's lifted and we get back to normality is what we're calling the blitz boom. So I think you're going to see a blitz of regulation, credit. You'll probably see corporation tax released. You'll probably see a relief on VAT. You'll see some regulations released. You'll see planning provisions reduced. There's going to be this blitz for about a year you need this flywheel going. Like, you need to get the flywheel of the economy going, and there'll be a year of like really, really sort of fertile ground. So for those of us that are ready to go, that'll be good. And then strategically, it's just repositioning. We've got blocks of flats, we've got business centres we're developing, we've got PRS stock, we've got a lot of developments going on, but they're for high-end PRS, and that's not really going to be a thriving sector in the immediate after this. So we've just pivoted it immediately. And one of the sites, for example, I was going to spend 300 grand turning into a block of 12 high-end, high-density professional apartments. We've just flipped the switch, gone back to the planners, and subject to getting it passed, it'll turn into a 28-bed HMO for emergency. Well, we're working with a charity, emergency accommodation, homeless people, sort of moving into the care space and sector, because that place is going to be booming. You're going to have, unemployment's going to increase, average salaries will come down, the demand and supply mechanisms will change, and we're just repositioning. We've got quite a lot of stock and developments that are unencumbered, so we're raising capital on that, getting ready for the single let market. I think the government freezing the housing market has been a good thing, because it stops us being able to register reduce value transactions. And on the other end, that will hold the price. But what you're going to see then is the finance market freeze up. I mean, the finance market's already gone down in the last 3 days from over 5,500 products down to less than 3. There's going to be a finance lockup. And for those of us that are liquid, just if you've got unencumbered property, put a commercial facility over the top, put a drawdown on it so you can do it just as you need it. There's going to be huge opportunity, and I think just make the most of it. So those of you that want to keep in touch, join us on the Property Entrepreneurs community on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram, Property Entrepreneur, YouTube, Property Entrepreneur, and I'll just keep you posted as we go. But I feel very comfortable with everything. I think everything's stabilised. We're making the most of the opportunity, and we're entrepreneurs. This is what we signed up for. I think this is the environment we thrive in. So make the most of it. Back to you, Andrew.
Daniel, I think that was a phenomenal talk there, and you have picked on so many great points. I can see questions coming in. I mean, there's comments about your optimism is fantastic, and it's really nice to hear somebody being optimistic for a change. I know I echo your optimism as well, and that was a phenomenal talk. And questions are coming in regarding the Corona business interruption loans. So we'll do all of those in the Q&A afterwards. But Dan, I feel like joining you with a pint of ale sitting on the end of your barge. It's such a beautiful scenery. So,
yeah, Gin and tonic sundown is at 8 o'clock, so we'll have the Q&A first.
You're not allowed to join
we'll
him during lockdown, Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Daniel, thank you very much. Well, what I'll do, I'll begin with introducing our next speaker. Now, John has been like Dan, who spoke at the Great Props Meet, and last time Dan spoke, it was an outdoor event. And John has spoken to the Great Props Meet community, and John is quite a fantastic person. He's got 30 years in creative finance and real estate. He's done property transactions in 4 countries, 11 time zones. He's started out in Silicon Valley. He worked directly for Steve Jobs. So I'll let you ask him some questions about the Steve Jobs and why he was working with Steve and what he did. And he started his property investing before he moved to London. And when he came to London, he worked, or his first job was with Swiss Banking Corporation, which is now known as UBS. So another big name organization. And he is famous for capital raising for property transactions. And his conventional and creative finance techniques for raising money for deals, they're second to none. He's absolutely fantastic. So I don't think I can big you up any more than that, John. So can we give a big round of applause for John and welcome him to share with us what he's got. Thank you, John.
I'd almost say you overshare when it comes to bigging me up. So as he said, as Andrew said, I have a tech background, started Silicon Valley, degree in computer science. So I'm going to maybe play around with the backgrounds and other things, and we could make this into a tech conversation. So we'd go out to the Valley. But more important is just so people know where I am. I'm actually in London. This is the shot from my balcony the other day. So it's a still image, but literally it's where I'm sort of in lockdown in London. No particular problems health-wise at this time. Just maybe I've forgotten to shave, and just so people can see the before and after. My wife is used to what you can see now. That's the still image. And then this is the sort of bad attempt at a beard, or I'm not sure it's an attempt at a beard. I think it's an excuse to just not shave while I can get away with it. Now, I do need to warn everybody, we are going to use some technology. I want to try it across using YouTube. I know there's a 30-second delay on YouTube. The key for that is that I'll try to pace it so that everybody can see it at the right speed, and my verbal commentary will coincide with what you're seeing, so it should be just fine. Let me flip over to what I'm going to share on the screen, and we'll put up the presentation. This is not meant to be like a presentation as in some long drawn out thing. It's more an interactive session. So we're here for education. We're here to talk about how we're going to invest going together, going forward during the crisis and after the crisis. So opportunities ahead. That's what the theme is tonight. There's a lot of different angles. You've definitely heard a few points from Mark in particular, know where you are, know where you're going. And then Daniel, in a sense, said a couple things that were similar. What have you, let me see, I made some notes. So what is your strategy? How are you communicating? And what are your finances like? Well, there's a lot of themes that are common there, and you're going to see it again when I jump to sort of my bullet points. And you have to focus on what you can control. Cash flow and cash reserves are what matter at this point. That's what's going to keep you alive. That's what's going to keep you in the game. That's what's going to help you come out of the gate a little stronger than the competition, which can give you advantage. I would like to say maximizing your ROI is a fool's game. I heard someone speak about this about 3 months ago, and I would suspect now they're not so happy about their ROI focus. The problem with focusing on ROI is it leads you to being fully leveraged with very little capital or cash laying around, because it dampens your ROI. Well, in times like this, having that spare cash and a lower return can be the smarter move. As we heard from Daniel, it's about relationships or communication. and that can lead to capital, and I'll talk about that slightly. Forget about market timing. There is no such thing as market timing in the property sector. You can't predict the bottom. You can only look at it after it's already gone by. So don't even waste time. Just focus on doing really solid deals that you're happy to keep. And education does work, and this is a good time to upskill. There's no particular reason that you have to turn into a Netflix junkie. You can actually dive into some things you've been meaning to get into that you haven't had time for. So we're going to have a bit of interaction, and the key reason is that if I just lecture, the retention is low, about 5%. So if I then have a way of having engagement, demonstrations, discussion groups, practice by doing, or as you're going to see here, by actual interaction on the screen, then retention is 30 to 75%. Way better than if you just listen to me. So I need you to go through some device to menti.com. Could be your phone, could be your computer, could be your iPad, the spare tablet, the spare device. You don't necessarily need to be watching on the screen while you do this because it'll actually show up on your phone. So menti.com, and then put in the code 345183. Menti.com, fill in the code 345183. This is so everybody can see what everybody else is doing and what everybody else is thinking. When you get there, what I want you to do is just first name. No stupid, rude, whatever cliches, but just first name, first initial, whatever you're comfortable with, but try to avoid anything that shouldn't be on the screen. As you'll notice as we move along, the screen will actually update in real time, the one that's coming to you by YouTube, and you'll see the interactions for the rest of the room. This is an opportunity for people to start to learn who else is listening in, as in what type of strategies they're using, what type of capital they have, what problems they're having. So it's a real opportunity to start to sort of engage with the audience, even though you might be, quote, in your bedroom or in your office or wherever you're sort of hibernating at this point. So as I'm watching the screen, we're up to 23 people have filled in some information. It'll keep climbing to a certain point. Some of you probably won't be able to participate only because you don't want to get out a second device, so you don't want to stop watching TV or whatever it is that you're really doing. So we have 29 so far. One of the things you'll notice, if someone has the same name, that will just get bigger. So if there were two Marks, then suddenly the word Mark will be much bigger on the screen. So Andrew, what do you think of the interaction so far?
I think that's very good, John. We've got 89 on the YouTube, so there should be a few more than that feeding through.
Yeah, I don't expect everybody to participate. That's fine, folks, if you can't. Those that do will get slightly more value out of this. But 38 is a good number, so I'm going to push on. People that want to get started, just go to the menti.com and then put in the code 345183. You can catch up. It's not a big deal. So now that everybody has a little sense of how it works, I need you to answer this question. What's your experience as a real estate investor? Which one of the four categories would you put yourself in? This will sort of segment the audience. This will help us understand some comments going forward that I'll ask, that I'll make, or questions I'll ask the audience. You'll get to see what people who are just starting and doing versus people who have been doing it for over a decade. I have like 3 screens going, so I'm sort of bouncing around looking at them if you're wondering what I'm staring at. So what I see so far is 42 have participated. More than half the audience, or right at 50% of the audience, have over a decade of experience. Very few people are just getting started. It's fine if you are. And then the bulk of the rest of everybody else is in the middle, 1 to 5 or 6 to 10. So let me push on, folks, and you can catch up if you need to. So what is your primary strategy? Are you a buy-to-let landlord? Are you a developer? Are you into HMOs? You need to pick one. And what you're going to see on the screen as people pick it, it will also show you the people who have experience or just starting or 6 to 10 years. So it'll break it out, the colors, by the experience level. So you'll start to understand, do people who have more experience do certain things, or people who have less experience do other things? Or is it quite evenly spread? The magic in a live property networking event is in the room. It's not the speaker, it's the audience, it's the conversations. For some people, it's the networking at the bar. That's one of the things that COVID-19's wiped out. So one of the things you have to do during this period is learn how to interact remotely, whether you have pop-up coffee meetings, whether you participate in little real-time surveys like this, things that cause engagement, things that cause you to gain insight about what other people are thinking and what other people are doing, particularly people who are active real estate investors rather than just someone trying to sell some theory or some newspaper article or whatever that they do. So tonight, 53% are in the buy-to-let sector or focused on buy-to-let, and the next biggest category is HMO. Everything else is quite small or quite minor, relatively speaking. And there's 47 people when I made that comment that had voted. So this slide, the one that will appear on your screen fairly shortly, is what do you want to know? You can actually ask questions, and other people can see the questions that were asked. No one will know who asked it, but you can ask questions and you can actually uprate other people's questions if you think it's a great question. You want to make sure that we address it tonight, or maybe through Andrew after tonight. So you'll be able to ask questions whenever this question slide comes up. You can also use the chat as Andrew's had you do up till now. That's a great way to communicate, and also for everybody to see the questions. This is just a little more organized when it comes to making sure that we understand what is still open. So there's a few questions coming in. That's cool. Biggest problem with real-time software like this is as I move to the next slide, you'll be stopped from submitting questions right now because you're going to be tracking where I am, not where you are on the screen. So I'm going to just sort of drag my feet a little on this slide just in case a couple other people want to add something or uprate a question. Okay, the count is at 9, 10. Highest ranked questions tend to be at the top. So let me press on so we don't take too much of your evening. So talking about attracting deals, attracting money, finding suppliers or tenants. Let me highlight something that I've done this a few times. I've found it rather fascinating at the results of the next few questions. So who tonight uses Facebook advertising? Categories are you've never used it, 0. You've dabbled, you're a regular ongoing user, or you run campaigns with someone else. This is part of what you do as a service. I need honest answers, but I'll start to tell you what I think we're going to see is that it's very underused by property investors. This is not an endorsement for Facebook, but this is an opportunity to think about, is this a way to reach money or reach tenants or reach property owners, suppliers? If you had some time and you wanted to study up on Facebook advertising and practice a little, would this be a good time to maybe bone up on it and sort of do the basics and start to learn? So of tonight's audience, of the people that have voted, 25% actually have dabbled with Facebook ads. Almost 3/4 have never used Facebook ads. So let's jump to something that might be a little bit more used. So what about Google advertising? More or less the same question, but different platform. So as we wait for the votes to come in, sounds like an election. Again, large number, maybe 2/3, have never used Google advertising. Slightly more have dabbled. Again, very little when it comes to regular use or no one doing campaigns for others. So 44 votes, same large distribution towards hasn't even used it. Do you consider advertising as something you might want to study, or you might want to shop for a vendor, or you might want to engage with people who do use it and start to understand whether this could work for you? 48 votes. I'm going to move on. So social media and online sharing. This one I think most people here will use. This could be YouTube, this could be Facebook groups, it could be LinkedIn. Do you use online or social media as part of your business? Not just discussing a sports team or a baking hobby, but as part of your business. Is this a way to build investor familiarity? Is it a way to find deals? Is it a way to get your questions answered when it comes to a tenant problem or other things? So given this is a YouTube broadcast presentation that Andrew marketed through social media, 30%, 26 to 30%, well, okay, now 22% saying they don't use social media. So 20% of tonight's audience doesn't use what we're using tonight. Otherwise, very even distribution, other than there's a percentage of people who haven't found it very effective for them. They haven't used it in enough maybe, or otherwise engaged such that it works for them. See, Mark's back on camera.
Very interesting results, John. If I can just add, very interesting results there. It's pretty much evenly split between all categories there.
Well, again, I find it interesting that we have almost 20% not using social media, yet they're here. So somehow they must have seen what you shared. Maybe you sent email. So possibly that 20% is only reachable by email. So who's used private funding for a deal or deals? One or more deals, whether you use private funding as a loan, whether you use private funding as a joint venture / profit share. Some of you might have done both at various times. That's fine. And then some of you may not have used private funding to date. Interesting that 8 people who have said that they have 11 or more years experience, now 9, have never used private funding to date, 10 people. Very little use, as in 0% of the audience has used private funding for a joint venture. Again, this is being done so you can get insight for everybody who's in the virtual room with you. This is so you understand where you are, calibrating what you're doing against what other people are doing. Not like it's a competition, but more that you don't feel so isolated, more that you don't feel so alone, more that you don't feel so weird, and possibly to then network with people who have some of the similar backgrounds or have done things that you want to learn. So 44% people have voted, so I'll call that a full vote. No one has joint ventured with just joint venture. I should correct my earlier statement. So no one has done just a joint venture. 31% have done joint ventures and loans. Generally, what I'm seeing is a trend. I've done this survey of this particular slide in probably 5 events. Quite a few do loans, quite a few do both JV and loans. So I think there's a progression that they tend to start out maybe with loans is my speculation, hypothesis. It's not proven, I haven't dug into it. So know, like, trust. This is how you build deals, build relationships, engage with people. You need to keep it legal. The FCA in the UK does have regulations for this. If you're outside of the UK, you might have a local regulator like the SEC in the US who sets the game rules or rules of the game. That said, we are human beings, so the processes are the same when it comes to how you engage with people. So Here's a question to help everybody engage a bit. What is your biggest problem? Are you time poor? Are you lacking deals? Are you lacking cash? Or are you scared of making a mistake? And I did use a little extra animations for make it fun and entertaining while we watch. So far, with 20 or so votes, most people are having trouble running out of cash. Yet there's now 35% who can't find enough deals. So classically, when I've done this before, there's a big chunk of people who don't have enough deals and a big chunk of people who are running out of cash. I almost want to say, could you just talk to each other? Keep it legal, let's respect the regs. But in the room, there are people who could possibly work together, particularly also people who are time poor. And then there are some people who are worried about making a mistake. And the easiest way not to make a mistake is to work with someone else who might actually understand the thing you're worried about, even if it's just to hire someone as an advisor to get an answer to a question. So it looks like 30% approximately can't find enough deals and 42% keep running out of the cash and therefore have too many deals. So solutions in the room, because I do speak to people about the FCA regulations and how to raise money correctly, the smart money, the wealthy tend to come up to me afterwards and say, now that I get that you get it, now that I know you know the rules, can you help me with this cash? So in 10 days earlier this year, suddenly 40 million comes up from the back of the room. It's 3 different meetings to take to get to 40 million. So back to the question again, we've had 22 people submit questions. What do you actually want to know? What are the issues that you're trying to get resolved tonight? We're almost done on this, so another minute or two on letting you submit any questions and then I'll wrap up. So who actually has a deal and needs help? You might need actual assistance, as in how do I do something? You might have a deal, but you need cash. Some need both. A little observation while you're voting. It's fairly classic that the people with 5, 6, 7, 8 years of experience many times are able to find deals faster than they can fund them. They haven't been around enough, they haven't been in the game enough to have more cash than deals. They're out hustling, they're trying to grow their wealth, they're trying to get to the next level. And they know what a good deal looks like. They just keep running out of cash because they find more deals. So that could be a clue for those that have a bit more cash and want to be a little bit more passive or acting like an angel, where at 5 o'clock you can break out the gin and tonic, the wine, the whiskey, whatever it is that you like at the end of the day. So moving forward. So why do we use debt? We use debt because of the ability to secure the debt. Means that the risk is lower. The lender in first position has priority in default. My suggestion to everybody though is learn how to raise equity. Equity is the stuff you need above the debt, the other money in the deal. If you can't raise equity, you're going to struggle. Lenders will only lend so much, and they want to know that there's real equity in the deal after their debt to protect them. And if you're doing a planning opportunity, you're going to have almost 100% equity. It's very, very rare that you can borrow money secured on a planning application. So a little visual just to sort of spice it up slightly visually. The debt's the red stuff, the equity's the green stuff. For Mark, given he's in the US, the money is green, at least on one side over there. This gives you a sense of how the debt and the equity stacked up. It gives you a sense of how big a slice or tranche you might be able to put together. The rates of return that people would expect, they're on the right side of the screen. So just a little visual, give you a sense of how this works. The more you work on deals, the more you work on larger deals, the more you work in complex deals, the more this looks normal. To a buy-to-let investor, this is like, what the hell? A little warning here, this is my hobby horse. The FCA regulates the actions of promotion, arranging, pooling, and advising on investments. They don't regulate real estate. That's not their part of the regulations. There's a different department for that, but they do regulate how you communicate, how you talk about it, how you discuss it, how you share documents, what you post on Facebook when you're trying to raise money. That's what they regulate. And there are rules about it to the point that it's a criminal act if you don't follow their rules. Some people are, the hot buzz topic is SaaS, as a pension vehicle. This is not a workaround for the FCA regulations. If you start mixing money from your SaaSes, it is very easily a collective investment scheme. It therefore falls directly under the FCA regulations. So don't assume that a SaaS allows you to avoid the FCA. If you have any questions, you want to book a phone call, you want to have a chat, you just want to send email, you think I was a bozo, whatever it is that you want to share, there's some details on the screen. You'll see it on your phone, you'll see it on the screen in YouTube, either way you want to watch it. And then I'm done, Andrew, so I'm going to stop sharing. I'll let you come in.
Well, thank you very much, John. That was a phenomenal talk. I mean, talk about online and interactive. That was truly interactive, and there's some phenomenal stats there. I was just looking at all of the feeds coming through on the phone, and it's crazy what you've managed to achieve. So what we're going to do is just allow people 2 minutes to post some questions on the YouTube feed, unless the Menti is still running. I'm not sure if Menti is still running or open to take questions. If it's open to take questions, then John will be feeding those questions in off the Menti feed. I'll feed the questions in off the YouTube. There's a lot of thanks coming through for you as well, John, on that. That was a brilliant session. So if I can very briefly, while I let some questions come in, just mention that tomorrow there's a great debate going on. Now, this great debate is between myself and Adam Lawrence, and it is chaired by Rupert Chapman. And this week's great debate is about whether we should flip a property or hold. And last week, we had a debate on whether commercial or residential was the way forward when we come out of COVID-19. Now, that debate will run for around about an hour and will be live at 4 p.m. on YouTube. And the following day, if you wish to join me again, I have David Clouter with us sharing property cycles, most specifically where we are at in the cycle and what is coming next. And David is pretty damn good at predicting what comes up and what comes next. So what I will do is I will jump back to the Zoom meeting here, and I will invite all of our panelists to join us. And I will start by asking a couple of the questions that have been coming in. I'm just having trouble unmuting Dan for some reason. There we go. We've got Dan unmuted. Oh, no, muted him again. I think we're both unmuting Dan, and we're conflicting with each other. Now, if I can start off by asking a couple of questions that have come through. The first question is going to Mark Alexander, and it's come from Srini. How young can somebody be to get involved in a limited liability partnership, Mark? Srini's got a son who is 13 and wants to know, is it possible for a 13-year-old to get involved in the business?
Yes, it is. In the UK, there's actually no minimum age to be a member of an LLP. However, there is a minimum age to work, and the minimum age at which you can work is 13. Now, there's very little in terms of restriction on who can become a member of an LLP. So theoretically, if your child or grandchild had a large amount of money, an inheritance, for example, they could be a sleeping partner in your LLP, or at the age of 13, they could start to do a job role within your LLP. So there's a couple of different answers. It's either 13 if they're working, or they could even be younger. However, they have to have an understanding of what they're getting into. And the second point is that there is no tax advantage in a person under the age of 18 being involved in your business, because persons under the age of 18 are taxed at their parents' marginal rate. So if you're already earning 100,000 a year and therefore you're a higher rate taxpayer, that is the rate of tax that you will be paid on allocating any money in terms of profit in an LLP to your minor children, i.e. children under the age of 18. The advantage, of course, when they are 18 is, and a lot of people take on their children as members of an LLP when they go to university, for example, or to college at the age of 18. That's when they've got their own nil rate band tax allowance. So they can work for their parents' business. The first 12,500 is obviously tax-free. The next 37,500 is only taxed at 20%. So if you take that same person with 100,000 of income or 100,000 of profit, if they allocate 50,000 of that to their 18-year-old child, the child's only paying £7,500 worth in tax on that profit, whereas the parents would have been paying 40% tax, i.e. £20,000. So I've answered your question and I've gone a little bit beyond, if that's okay, Andrew.
No, that is perfect. That's perfect. It was a very solid answer as well, Mark, if I may say so.
You're very welcome. You'll notice that I've joined John on the beach, by the way, on the other side of the palm tree.
Yeah, we have the same backgrounds.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, for that, I will bring you in, John, then next, and I'll ask you a question. I've got a question here from a John on YouTube, and John's question is, many products are drying up. Together Lending and others have removed products. Where do you see the financial market going, John?
So in the Q&A in the Menti, there was also a question very similar to this, so it's great that you brought it up. So a couple things, and Mark, by the way, used to be a mortgage broker running a very large mortgage business. He's probably got more perspective at some level. What I think is true, though, is lenders, particularly ones that are more specialist, tend to get their money from somewhere else. They don't have their own money. Even the big banks don't have their own money. They have depositors' money. A lot of the lenders will not lend above 60% LTV because they can't get a valuation done. And if they can't get an independent third party to say whether the property even exists, then they're a little bit, from a liability and bank regulations or company regulations, stuffed when it comes to raising a lot of funds. Second is, you will find that there will be projects that are wobbling. I was talking to someone yesterday, the day before, whatever it was, I guess late last week, and they have a project that's a fine project, except there appears to be a clause in their loan contract that might cause them to lose the loan that they've already signed up with. So that loan may be getting pulled based on a clause related to essentially viruses or other pandemic type things. So the pragmatic way, given that you should focus on what you can control, pay attention to what lenders can do, figure out how to raise money from private investors, equity, cash, maybe sell some of your own stuff, but a little hard in this market. The point is, if you can legally raise money from others so that you can take action when they can't, or when the other people who didn't think about it are sitting on the sidelines, don't expect the lenders to be back to 80, 85% very quickly. There's going to be a little bit of a problem and constipation in the system. So Mark, do you have any comments on that?
I would agree with everything you've said, John. I wouldn't really think there's that much to add to that. I think firming up your cash flow is a great way of doing it. Obviously, your tax planning and making sure that, you know, as I said in my talk, that you've got that part right and your structure right, and everything that you've said. And by the way, I absolutely love the interactivity of your software. Is it publicly available or is it your own?
So it is not mine. Being a tech guy, I'm always looking for this stuff. So I found Menti about 3 years ago now. I tend to use it at my monthly meet. the London real estate meet that I've been running for a long time, because I found you get a better quality engagement when people can actually interact with each other, and this opens up the conversation.
So anybody can sign up to Menti.com, right?
Yes, it's technically Mentimeter is the website. Menti.com is where you do your voting. You'll find it either way. And it's, I think, a Danish company, and it was written for business meetings, so inside corporates to have better meetings.
Very good. Thank you. I thought it was a superb presentation.
Thank you.
I've got a couple of questions here, and the next couple are coming in for Daniel. Now, Daniel, you've got a prolific HMO business, and I've got a question here from Mandy, who's asking, firstly, will anybody want to live in a HMO after lockdown?
Well, I think the macroeconomics of demand and supply is the fact there's still X amount of people living in the country. The only thing that's going to check, there's still going to be the same amount of demand for accommodation, whether it's PRS or social. The main shift is going to be that there is going to be a reduction in supply. You know, a lot of the big sites have closed down now. We're already undersupplied if you read the sort of, you know, the headlines. So there's going to be a demand and supply. What you're going to see is just a shift of profile. I think we'll see, obviously, that you've got like another 2 million people already signed up, 2 to 3 million signed up already for universal credit. A lot of them are self-employed. You know, you've got your foot soldiers, they'll be coming back. There is going to be an impact on the unemployment rate. We could go back up to, you know, it's not unrealistic to go up to 8 to 10%. And what you see there is the labour market will shift. The demand and supply mechanism will pull the price down. And, you know, that high-end professional aspirational rate where companies are expanding, recruiting loads of graduates, and there's good solid salary inflation or wage increases will probably be impacted. So I think the people who are at the top of the pile with, you know, your executive HMOs, stuff like that, I think the price sensitivity will increase. And there'll just be a shift in the market. I mean, to give you an example, like the one I said earlier, we had planning for 10 or 12 apartments in a block we were developing. The reality of spending 300 grand on that now to get it to the top end of the market and flip it onto Hong Kong or China it's a real sensitive market. So we've just pivoted, and the reality is there's going to be significant demand for the lower end of the market. So we're now spending more like 20,000 just because it used to be a hostel to turn it into a big HMO, just a compliance change really. And, you know, that'll cash flow better now than a professional HMO. So I think it depends what sector you're in. It depends what location you're in. It depends how well you're positioned. It's just a case of understanding your market and knowing where you go. I mean, we've got about 1,000 rooms around the UK, and some areas will be really sensitive, some really won't. So it's just a case of mastering your market, really.
So a quick comment.
Sure.
Bing Bing did a presentation recently, and she was saying that she's seeing higher demand for en-suite type accommodation, that people are now more aware of why they should pay to have their own bathroom and maybe their own refrigerator. And in some of her units that are en-suite, they've dropped in refrigerators. So it's made it easier for people to self-isolate. And if we have continued self-isolation on and off for the next year or two, then you might see a shift in the type of HMO demand.
Yeah, I think potentially.
That will also affect HMO room bandings as well with councils potentially. Sorry, Dan, I didn't mean to cut over you.
No, that's fine. I think it's just that it's understanding the macroeconomics at the highest level, which will be the fact that when you got boom and bust, the boom in space or the increase in demand will probably be at the lower end of the market rather than the top end. That'll have an impact. And then locally, it will just be looking at what's happening. You know, if Amazon go and open 5 distribution warehouses because everyone's shopping online now, every man and his dog's going to be ploughing into HMOs because, you know, that's the sort of accommodation that's going to be required. If you're in places like Reading, London, transport net, like people that commute into London, the reality is like remote working is probably going to be higher, and you know the price sensitivity of the market will probably increase as people's salaries start to get reduced as more labour becomes available. So I think it's just really tracking the economics of it and having a plan B really, and yeah, just master the rules and play the game.
Yeah, Well, I was going to say we've got Mandy, who's agreeing with both yourself and John, that's saying she's installing dry kitchens and en suites in her refurbs as she feels that's where the market's going. I've got a quick one before I come back to another question with yourself, Dan. And that quick question is, or quick reminder to everybody is, Rupert has reminded me that I didn't make clear if you can go to the Unity Facebook group to register for that debate tomorrow. So go to Facebook and Unity Property Group will get you onto that group. There's a lot of feedback coming for yourself, Daniel, with people saying they love the fact that you're so positive, that they agree with the fact that they think the government will get the economy going, lift restrictions on planning and tax and other things. And questions coming in also on the coronavirus business interruption loans. Was that hard? Was that property businesses, trading businesses? How would you define those businesses? There are questions coming regards that.
Yeah, so so there's lots of considerations around this. The main thing is the government have got to do everything they can to keep the economy going. One way is that you've got to get liquid funds into the businesses. There's grants initiatives. The loans are obviously the big way. If you think about the loans as revenue replacement, that's the way they work. And if you strip back I've read every government document, I've read every publication, listened to every update. We've been doing this the day that it was announced. We put our first application in. So the speed of implementation is really, really important here. If you think about the fundamentals and strip all of the fiscal, monetary policy, strip everything back, there's only like a handful of things. There's like one is, so this is who is eligible for this capital. The first is, were you a fundamentally commercially sound business before Corona? So were you a business, you were paying your overheads and you were making some money? Secondly is, have you been actually impacted by Corona? And can you prove that? The third is, if you were to borrow some money, could you successfully trade out of it? And then the fourth is, if you can trade out of it, can you then effectively service the debt? That's it. Like it's just basic economics and like commercial structure. If you can tick all those boxes and your company is within the space, which is basically a trading business, UK based, under about 40 million, ideally with more than a year, or ideally with like 2 to 3 years trading accounts, can prove that you're profitable at the minute. They're the main ones that fly through. The first phase was just doing the dance with the banks. Like everybody, I've written a press release on this. It's on the Property Entrepreneur website. It's all over social media. It's on the Property Entrepreneurs community. If you go on Facebook, read that press release, and it'll tell you start to finish how the market's played it. And then you can download a copy of the blueprint we used. It's 2 pages, it's 5 steps, and it raised us 6 figures in, well, by the time they revised the policies, 48 hours. The main thing is you need to speak to a bank relationship manager, bank manager. Otherwise, you're just going to be stuck in the computers like everybody else. The market is completely undersupplied, so they don't have the capacity to get these through at the minute. There's a very short window, which will probably last for the next 3 weeks, where there's huge government pressure to get money out of the banks. I mean, without exaggerating, the bank took our contracts on Sunday afternoon, and it's Monday morning now, or it's Monday evening now. Monday morning, they put the money in our account. There's huge pressure for the bank to get the money out of the bank, out the door. And the ones that will fly, we registered, like we own 20 different companies. We put through loss makers, we put through break-even companies, and the profitable ones that we put through just flew through straight away. So they're your first round of companies that will get money pretty quickly. Deal with your own bank. Don't try and go to another one at the minute. The challenger banks this week have now become accredited for the scheme. If you go on the British banking website, you can see the new challengers like Funding Circle. You're going to pay a higher rate there, but you'll get the money faster. It's just a game. Like, do the dance with the banks, play the game, but you need to be top of the pile and need to be pushing through, really.
Yeah. Thank you, Dan. And I can certainly confirm I downloaded your document. I think it was Saturday you put that up there, and I think I must have been one of the very first to download that. So thank you for the share.
There's like 1,800 downloads in the first 24 hours. It's like it's just a blueprint. It took us 8 applications and about 10 revisions, and all it comes down to is 5 points. Just if you can tick those boxes, borrow the money. If you can't tick those boxes, you wouldn't want to borrow the money because you don't need it, or you shouldn't take it.
Well, Yeah, well, I applied before then, but I was interested in your process, and it took 20 minutes to apply, and I'm still waiting. I have chased it up today, but no response. We've got time for one more question, which is coming from Sam, and this question I think will go to mainly Mark. He's got a small portfolio in it and wants to move it to a limited company and set up a trading business. He wants to know what's the most cost-effective way to do. Now, I know being an accountant myself, that's not a 2-minute answer. Is there an easy answer to that one, Mark?
There's so many discrepancies in itself within the question. So if it's not a trading business now, how is it going to be a trading business when it goes into the limited company? How is the business going to evolve? Is he looking to, for example,
a limited company for the property business and a separate trading business?
Right. Okay.
So
well,
apologies if I didn't make that clear.
That's okay. He could certainly have 2 separate companies. If the question is how does he transition the existing properties into the limited company, then there's 3 key criteria. One, is he going to have to change the funding? Well, that will depend on the terms and conditions of the lenders. Do they prohibit the transfer of beneficial ownership or not? Very few normal commercial or normal buy-to-let mortgage lenders don't. So if he's got some with Fleet or CHL, they actually prohibit the transfer of beneficial ownership, others don't. The second one is he a business? Does it meet the meaning of business test within HMRC's capital gains tax manuals? For example, is he spending 20 hours a week managing that business or running that business himself? And if he is, then he might be entitled to an incorporation relief to roll over capital gains. And the third one is the business already a partnership? If it is, and it's been an established partnership for a long period of time, and that doesn't necessarily mean registered as a partnership, because the definition of the partnership under the Partnership Act 1890 is 2 or more people engaged in business together with a view to profit. So it depends on the facts on the ground. Again, proper advice is going to need to be taken. But if it is a partnership, either a registered ordinary partnership, a mixed partnership, limited liability partnership, or even just a joint venture that might meet the criteria of partnership under the Partnership Act 1890, then there may be an opportunity for him to pay no stamp duty land tax in the company when the transition occurs. So there's lots of different aspects to look at. You also need to look at, well, is it going to be worth doing? Because it isn't always. Sometimes it's a phenomenally better for cash flow to transition to a limited company. But of all the inquiries that our tax team gets, only about 5% of people qualify to mitigate their stamp duty, capital gains tax, and the cost of refinancing instantly. And there are other, so 95% of the people come to us end up with a different solution and may evolve towards that or may not in the future. So I would say be very, very, very careful before you sort of jump in with both feet into incorporation. If it works and it works well, it can be absolutely phenomenal, but it doesn't work for everybody. 95% of people watching this video, it will not work for.
Yeah, now I can support what Mark is saying there. I mean, a secondary question that's come up on that, which just before I close, it's to do with mortgages on an LLP, and the person who's raised the question is struggling to find a broker who can sort mortgages for LLPs. Apparently everybody runs for the hills and are declining their application.
It doesn't surprise me.
Is there a way forward that you would suggest on that?
Yeah. I mean, you've got to think of it this way. LLPs are now 21 years old in the UK. And they were first adopted by professionals like solicitors and medical practitioners, many of which who have multiple partners, 10, 20, 50, 100, sometimes thousands of partners. You can only get 4 people on a mortgage deed. So firstly, there is no such thing as a partnership mortgage. There's never been a partnership mortgage application. So whether you're a partnership or an LLP, it doesn't exist. The individuals tend to borrow in their own name, and you can only have up to 4 on a mortgage deed anyway. So you would buy it in an individual or a group of individuals' names and hold the property on trust for the partnership. The other point that has come up in very recent times, one or two lenders have created new mortgage products specifically for LLPs because they are a separate legal entity. It's a very new innovation. Paragon Mortgages, for example, is one of them, but they actually have a specific criteria that says we do not lend to mixed partnerships. Now, given the amount of influence that Paragon Mortgage have over the UK credit industry, you know, the likes of John Heron, who's a very good friend of mine and has been for years, he's the MD. He served as chairman on the IMLA board and the Council of Mortgage Lenders board. Given that they've got this criteria, they've got an LLP product, but have come up with this thing, this criteria, we won't lend to mixed partnerships, then expect that to translate to other mortgage lenders going forward. So be very, very careful of mixed partnerships. We do recommend them, but we recommend them very, very rarely, usually for cash-rich investors or people who don't need to borrow money going forwards. But we recommend them even less than we recommend in corporations. So the answer to the question is, if you've got an LLP or a partnership, you could still borrow in your own name. There's absolutely no problem with that. But do check your mortgage lender's criteria and terms and conditions. For example, if you're taking a loan with fleet mortgages, it will prohibit you holding that property on trust for the LLP. Whereas most mortgage lenders are silent on those conditions, and therefore we know from my own court case against the West Brom that a lender cannot call in a loan unless it's in default if it's a long-term mortgage. And of course, if they haven't got criteria that says you can't, then you can assume you can.
Brilliant answer, Mark. Brilliant answer. Now, what I'd like to do is thank very much everybody, because we've slightly run over time by 8 minutes. So I think if I start with yourself, Mark, thank you very much. That's been a real deep dive on a lot of tax subjects and also some areas of mortgage finance. For Daniel Hill, I'd like to give a massive thank you to, because the coronavirus business interruption loan, it looks like you've now moved inside to get in the warm there. And I think that was brilliant that you've managed to share that, and the positivity, but also where you predict the market is going. And John, the interactivity of that presentation was phenomenal. And what you've done is actually teased out from the room, and the comments that are flooding in on YouTube are all saying that was a brilliant tool, they loved it. Can they meet the people who've got the money, or can they meet the people who've got the deals? So we need to try and work a way out of joining people together. And all it leaves for me to say is thank you all very much for joining us today. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Mark. And thank you, John, for joining us today. Thank you all very much.
Good night.
Cheers, Andrew. Good to see you, John. Take care. Cheers,
Bye-bye.
Mark.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
All right. Stay safe.
Take care, guys.